shouldn't have done it, Solomon said quietly, his voice trembling. Quincy didn't respond. He knew Solomon was right, but it was too late for regrets now. Hours passed and the forest seemed endless. The path was narrow and overgrown, and the darkness felt alive. Just when they thought they couldn't go any further, they reached the clearing. In the center of the clearing was the body of the woman. She lay on the ground, her skin pale and cold, just as they had seen her in the mortuary. But coiled around her was terrifying, something far more terrifying. A massive snake, its scales black as night, its eyes glowing red in the darkness. The snake hissed, its long body tightening around the woman's corpse. It was the demon Kofi had warned them about, the creature that guarded her body. The boys froze, fear gripping them like a vice. They knew what they had to do, but none of them wanted to face the demon snake. Kwesi took a deep breath, his hand shaking. "We have to distract it," he whispered. "One of us has to get the body while the others keep the snake busy." "No," David said, his voice filled with terror. "We can't fight that thing." "We don't have a choice," Kwesi replied. "If we don't, we will die anyway. The death will never stop." Solomon stared at the snake, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "I'll distract it." Kwesi and David looked at him in shock. "Are you crazy?" David asked. "That thing will kill you." "I know," Solomon said, his voice steady. "But we have to end this. If I don't make it, at least you two can finish it." Before they could stop him, Solomon ran towards the snake, shouting to get its attention. The demons hissed and lunged at him, its fangs gleaming in the moonlight. Solomon dodged the first strike, but he knew he wouldn't be able to avoid it for long. Kwesi and David didn't waste any time. While the snake was distracted, they ran to the woman's body, grabbing her arms and dragging her away from the snake. Solomon fought bravely, but the snake was too fast. It struck him with lightning speed, its fangs sinking into his skin. He fell to the ground, gasping for breath as the venom coursed through his veins. Kwesi and David didn't look back. They ran as they could, carrying the woman's body with them. The forest felt like it was closing in around Kwesi and David as they ran, the woman's cold body dragging behind them. The weight of what they had done pressed on their minds as they struggled to breathe, their hearts pounding in their chest. They didn't dare look back. The sound of Solomon's scream echoed in their ears, but they couldn't stop. They had to finish what they started. Branches scraped their faces and tore at their clothes, the thick underbrush making every step harder. Kwesi's legs burned with exhaustion, but fear kept him moving. David was sobbing quietly beside him, his breath shallow and panicked. "We can't leave them," David choked out between breath, his voice trembling. "Solomon, he's still back there." Kwesi's chest tightened at the thought of Solomon, but he knew what had to be done. "We'll save him if we can, but first we have to stop her." David's face was wet with tears, but he nodded. They both knew that going back was not an option. Solomon had given them a chance, and if they didn't put the woman's spirit to rest, everything would be for nothing. The death at the school would continue and the curse would never end. After what felt like an eternity, they stumbled into another clearing, this one darker than the last. The air here felt thick, suffocating and cold. In the middle of the clearing stood a large tree, ancient and gnarled, its twisted branches reaching out like claws. The air around it buzzed with a natural energy. Kwesi could feel it prickling at his skin, a cold warning that they were close to something dangerous. David fell to his knees beside the woman's body, gasping for air. This has to be it," he whispered, looking up at the tree. "This is where we bury her." Kwesi knelt beside him, his hands trembling as he wiped sweat from his brow. He didn't know how they were going to do it, but he had no choice. They had to put her body to rest, here where the cross could finally be broken. As they began digging into the hard ground with their bare hands, the wind around them picked up, howling like a distant scream. Quincy could feel the presence of something dark closing in around them, watching, waiting. He glanced at David, who was shaking as he dug, his eyes wide with fear. "Faster," Quincy urged, his voice tight with panic. He could feel the ground resisting, as if the earth itself didn't want to accept the woman's body. Suddenly, there was a noise, a low growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Quincy's heart jumped into his throat. He looked up, his blood running cold. Through the trees just beyond the edge of the clearing, he saw something moving. Shadows twisted and shifted, and from them, the glowing red eyes of the demon snake appeared. "It's coming!" David screamed, his voice breaking. Quincy's mind raced. There was no time. They couldn't bury her fast enough. Then an idea struck him. "The tree," he said, his voice shaking. "We need to hang her from the tree. It's the only way." David looked at him in confusion, but there was no time for questions. Quincy grabbed the woman's cold arms and pulled her towards the base of the tree. He began tying the clothes around her limbs, securing them to the low-hanging branches. "We don't have time," David cried, his eyes darting towards the tree where the snake was slithering closer, its massive form gliding through the underbrush with terrifying speed. Quincy's hand shook as he finished tying the last knot. "Help me lift her." Together, they hoisted the woman's body up, her pale, lifeless face staring down at them with an eerie stillness. The wind howled louder, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. As the last rope was secured, the clearing was suddenly filled with an unnatural silence. The wind stopped. The snake froze at the edge of the clearing, its red eyes watching them, but it didn't move any closer. For a moment, Quincy thought it was over, but then the woman's body twitched. David gasped in horror as the woman's eyes opened wide, and her mouth twisted into that same cruel smile they had seen at the mortuary. Her head jerked violently to the side, and her limbs began to thrash against the ropes that held her to the tree. Quincy stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. "What's happening?" he shouted, panic rising in his throat. The woman's body writhed and twisted, her eyes glowing with a dark, malevolent light. And then, in a voice that chilled Quincy to his core, she spoke. "You cannot stop me," she hissed, her voice low and filled with malice. "You have awoken something that cannot be undone." David screamed and fell to the ground, covering his ears as the woman's voice seemed to pierce the air around them. Quincy felt his knees go weak, but he couldn't look away. He watched in horror as the ropes began to free, the woman's body tearing free from the tree. The demon snake hissed, its massive form slithering closer, but it seemed to hesitate. It was as if even the creature feared what was happening now. Quincy's mind raced. He had to think of something, anything. He couldn't let her escape, couldn't let her continue to terrorize the school. And then, through the haze of her, he remembered something Kofi had said. The only way to stop her is to destroy the hearts. Quincy's hand shook as he fumbled in his pockets for the small knife he had brought with him. It was dull, barely more than a kitchen knife, but it was all he had. With a surge of adrenaline, he rushed towards the trashing body, his mind focused on one thing, ending the nightmare. The woman's eyes snapped towards him, her mouth twisting into a snarl. "You think you can kill me, boy?" she spat, her voice dripping with hatred. Quincy didn't respond. He lunged forward, driving the knife into her chest with all his strength. For a moment, nothing happened. The woman's body froze, her eyes widening in surprise. Then with a deafening scream, her form began to disintegrate, her skin turning to ash and blowing away in the wind. The demon snake let out a final hiss before retreating into the shadows, disappearing into the forest. The air around them grew still, and the oppressive darkness lifted. Quincy collapsed to the ground, his body shaking with exhaustion. David crawled over to him, his face pale and tear-streaked. Is it over? David whispered, his voice barely audible. Quincy looked at the pile of ash where the woman's body had been and nodded slowly. It's over. But as they sat there in the cold, empty clearing, they both knew that things would never be the same.